Hello everyone, Paisley Parvati Devi here with our weekly yoga philosophy share. I've got the fall spooky nature sounds happening in the background. I hope you guys can hear that. It's like super relaxing, crickets and owls, and it's spooky season, y'all. I think I say that like every video, but I just love this time of year, truly. So if you're new here, every Tuesday I come out with a new share about yoga philosophy, and this is for every level, but it's appropriate for beginner level. And I share from this book, the Yamas and Niyamas, Exploring Yoga's Ethical Practice by Deborah Adele. So we're halfway through the book officially, you guys. Woo! We read through the first 5 tenets, which are the yamas, and today we'll be starting on the niyamas, the second section of the 10 total tenets of this very foundational idea of yoga philosophy. And that's why I say this series of videos is appropriate for beginners, because the yamas and niyamas themselves are foundational to all yogic thought. So if you're curious about seeing other videos in this series, you can view the full playlist. It's on Facebook and YouTube, and all of the videos that I've posted before will be on that playlist. And then make sure that you like, subscribe, and like the Facebook page, and subscribe on YouTube so that you can get notifications for the future videos. Like I said, it's every Tuesday I'll be coming out with a new video for you. So you may be asking, what are the yamas and niyamas, Paisley? And I do go into a little bit more detail in some of the other videos. You might want to check out the introduction video to this series. But in a nutshell, these are 10 foundational ideas or guidelines, suggestions on how to live a life that is filled with happiness and peace, essentially avoiding the least amount of suffering for ourselves in our personal experience, and also avoiding causing suffering to any other being. So the yamas can be translated into restraints, and they are 5 actions or behaviors that can be restrained in order to attain or cultivate inner peace. And I always like to say that the yamas have to do a little bit more with our relationships and our relationship to anything outside of us, and to other people outside of us, anything that is not within ourselves, our relationship to material form, to excuse me, to the outer world. And then the niyamas, niyama, can't talk. Niyama can be translated to actions to be cultivated. It can be translated to observances, but I like to say that it is actions that could be cultivated, behaviors that could be cultivated in order to help us attain inner peace. And so these are going to have a little bit more to do with our own internal experience, our relationships with ourselves, and our relationship to the divine, the one consciousness, the eternal conscious being that resides in each and every one of us, right? That resides within our souls. So, excuse me. So as I said, today we are starting the niyamas. So the first half of the book again was all of the yamas, the actions to be restrained, behaviors to be restrained, to cultivate inner peace. So that is more relating to the outside world. We covered, let's see, can I remember them all? Nonviolence, nonstealing, truthfulness, non-excess, and non-possessiveness. Those are the 5 yamas. And so now we're diving into the niyamas, the actions or behaviors recommended to be cultivated in order to attain inner peace. And so the first of the niyamas is called saucha, or purity. And I'll just read the first half of this chapter on saucha, purity, today. In the Ragamuffin Gospel, Brennan Manning tells the story of a tense moment in a recovery room. A young female patient is lying in bed. Standing beside her is the surgeon who has just removed a tumor from the young woman's face. Her husband, also in the room, stands at a distance. The patient is looking at herself in a hand-held mirror for the first time after the surgery. Staring at the obvious downturned corner on one side of her mouth, she asks the surgeon if she will always look lopsided. The surgeon replies a solemn yes, noting that he had to cut a nerve to get the tumor out. In that crucial moment, where the silence betrays a young woman doubting her future physical appeal, the husband acts. He walks over to his wife and tells her that he thinks she looks kind of cute with one side of her mouth turned down. Then he looks at her tenderly, shapes his mouth like hers, matching lips to lips, and kisses her. The jewel of Saucha, or purity, carries a twofold meaning. First, Saucha invites us to purify our bodies, our thoughts, and our words. As we purify ourselves physically and mentally, we become less cluttered and heavy. Purification brings about a brightness and clarity to our essence. Second, this guideline has a relational quality. No one in the above story could have known ahead of time what the outcome of the surgery would be. Yet in that moment, when the wife doubted her own appeal, the husband was able to be with her purely, and in that purity support her sense of self and the beauty of their relationship. These two practices of purity are interrelated. As we purify ourselves from the heaviness and clutter of toxins, distractions, and scatteredness, we gain clarity to meet each moment with integrity and freshness. We become pure in our relationship with each moment. Purity as a cleansing process. The yogis have many practices to purify their bodies. Some may make us react with a "no way, not in my lifetime" attitude, like running a string through the nasal passages and out the mouth, or running 32 yards of cotton strip through the digestive system, to name a few. Other purifying processes may be easier for us to engage in, or at least try, like the Nuti Pot. So these are all examples of something called yoga kriyas, or cleansing actions. And yeah, they have to do with the body. Like, she gave the example of using the cleansing strip, and then now she's talking about the Nuti Pot. I don't know if any of you have ever tried a Nuti Pot. It kind of looks like a little watering can, and you just pour water through your nose in one nasal passage and out the other, and then you kind of go back and forth a few times, and it really gets all of the phlegm and residue that normally gets stuck up here in our nasal cavity. It just cleanses it all out. That's a little bit of a gentler cleansing practice. So she's just giving some different examples of ways that the yogis on the physical level embody this practice or idea of purity, and how we can purify our body. So we purify our body with different practices in yoga, we purify our minds, we purify our intentions. There's another tenet called tapas, which we'll also learn is very closely related to purity and this process of creating purity. Tapas means austerity, and it means burning away our impurities. So she's just, again, giving these examples, and maybe none of us can relate. Maybe some of us have at least tried, like the Nuti Pot, but other examples of practices to cleanse ourselves would be doing any type of fast, giving our bodies a break from eating for a few days, and doing something like a technology fast, where we just don't look at our phone, don't look at our computer for however long it is, 24 hours or a week or something, like social media cleanse. These are all practices of austerity, practices of helping ourselves clean our junk out of our trunk, mental, physical, emotional, and so forth. So other purifying practices may be easier for us to engage in, or at least try, like the Nuti Pot. Breath practices and postures are means of purifying the body, as are meditating and following an ethical system, like the Yamas and Niyamas. So she's saying that following these tenets itself, these are forms of austerities, because each of the tenets ask us to not just reflect on our own behaviors and habits, but to possibly make changes and implement more discipline into our daily lives so that we can begin to have more successful, more healthy relationships with outer things in the world and other people, but also with our own internal experience. So the breath practices are another limb of yoga called pranayama. And then the postures are yet another limb of yoga called asana. So I talk about this in some of the other videos as well in more depth, but basically the yamas and niyamas are part of a system called Ashtanga yoga, or the eightfold path, the eight-limbed path. In Sanskrit, Ashtanga means eightfold or eight-limbed. So this is the larger philosophy of yoga, one very common and traditional approach to the philosophy of yoga, which is called the eight limbs. It comes to us from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And I've mentioned before, the yamas and niyamas are actually the first two limbs of this philosophy. And then she's talking about here, the pranayama is the third limb, the asana is the fourth limb, and then the other four limbs, for a total of 8, the other 4 limbs are going to be various levels of meditation, various stages of meditation, could also be correlated with various levels of consciousness. So we won't get into that anymore in this series, but if you're really interested in yoga philosophy and you'd like to go deeper with me and learn more about the 8 limbs of yoga and learn more about yoga philosophy in depth, then I would love to have you on our Patreon. We have an amazing group of people in Patreon, such beautiful, inspiring souls, and we do a deep dive into the 8 limbs of yoga on Patreon. There's also a lot of amazing benefits that you get when you join and become a member of our community. I do put out exclusive content for Patreon twice a month, and this ranges from art-related content, yoga philosophy, Ayurveda related content. I share recipes, in general, healthy lifestyle tips, but a big focus is the yoga philosophy. So anywho, that resource is there for you if you would like to learn more about what she's talking about here. What we can say about these practices, all of the different purifying practices of yoga, one thing is clear. The yogis place a high priority on purification. Why this importance? There is a great energy that lies mostly dormant within each of us. This is the energy of consciousness or awakening. Some of you may have heard of the term Kundalini energy, Kundalini Shakti. This is the energy that she's talking about. So it's a great energy that lies mostly dormant within each of us. This is the energy of consciousness or awakening. We have all at times felt the movement of this energy, moments when tears silently well in our eyes with the stirring of overwhelming love, moments when beauty stops us and captures us in wonder, moments when contentment and well-being ooze from our pores, moments when the life force pulses through us like electricity, making us vibrant and young, moments when deep wisdom bathes light on our unknowing, moments when awareness comes to us in technicolor. These are small tastes of what happens as the energy within us awakens. To practice the guideline of purity is to engage in cleansing practices, both physical and mental, that prepare us for these kinds of experiences all the time. Cleansing strengthens the body and insulates the mind, preparing us for the awakening of this energy within us. So it's important in this philosophy to purify our bodily vessel in order to allow our bodies to be strong enough to withstand this energy, this dormant energy that's lying deep within our body. It's so powerful and so amazing. In fact, it's the energy of all creation. It's the divine energy, divine consciousness itself lives within you. And so when that energy awakens, we want to make sure that we have a very strong and stable space to welcome it into, and that space is our bodies. So we want to make sure that our body and our body-mind complex is stable and purified so that we can allow this energy to shine through, and so that we can actually harness this energy and hold on to it rather than just being completely overcome by it. So cleansing strengthens the body and insulates the mind, preparing us for the awakening of the energy within us. Cleansing prepares us for the greatness of our spirit. Cleansing lightens us to experience more of the divine mystery. Taking steps to cleanse and purify ourselves will look different for each of us. Cleansing doesn't have to be earth-shattering or weird to begin to work its magic. It might take the form of an increased physical exercise, or increased water intake, a day of fasting on fruit and juice, or perhaps a day of cleaning out closets. Maybe we will choose to spend a day purifying our tongue so that we speak nothing of harm or untruth for the entire day. Whatever form purifying takes, it always begins with an intention to lighten the load we are carrying. Where are these loads for you? Maybe your body is carrying poisonous toxins from a poor diet. Maybe your mind is carrying the heavy baggage of victimhood or unforgiveness. I feel like someone needs to hear that. Maybe it's me. I'll just repeat that. Where are these loads? Where are we carrying heaviness, stuck energy that isn't serving us anymore? Maybe your body is carrying poisonous toxins from a poor diet. Maybe it's just too much sugar, something like that, having this excess buildup of unbeneficial bacteria within our systems due to sugar, and then our mind is also feeling very dull and unmotivated and perhaps fatigued due to this toxin. I think it's important to recognize some of these more socially acceptable drugs, right? Like caffeine, sugar, chocolate, even greasy, heavy, fried food, things like that. These are all toxins, and maybe we wouldn't think of it that way on a day-to-day basis, but I think it's important to kind of shift our frame of reference to recognize that ultimately, yeah, these things can make us feel really good, but they aren't serving us. And also, on the other side of that, we can call them toxins, but also recognize that they are generally accepted as food, and that realistically, the majority of people in the world do intake these substances. And so maybe normalizing calling them toxins can normalize us thinking about them from a different frame of mind, rather than thinking of them as actual sustenance or food. And then maybe your mind is carrying the heavy baggage of victimhood or unforgiveness. I talked about this, I think it was the Aparigraha videos, where I talked about, we do have the choice to take ourselves out of this idea or feeling of being a victim of our lives. And that's not to say that bad things don't happen to good people. Bad things happen to everyone, whether or not you deserve it. And it's not important to ask yourself whether you deserve it. It's important to ask what you contributed to that situation and how you can change things in the future so that you're not continuing to repeat patterns and behaviors and mistakes that aren't serving you. Or if you genuinely didn't contribute to the situation, then you have the opportunity to control. The one thing that you can control is your reaction to that situation. So maybe you have no control whatsoever over whatever it was that happened, but you can still be in a place of being empowered by your reaction to it, and ask yourself, well, how can I respond to this in the way that is going to serve myself and others? And that's not to say that that process is pretty, but when we take ourselves out of the victim state of mind, or a state of mind of not being willing to forgive other people that we feel have wronged us, essentially we are taking our power back. Because think about that, to be a victim, or to be in this stuck place of being angry and upset over someone that we feel has wronged us, that is giving our power to someone else. That is saying, I feel bad because of them or this situation that's outside of me. when we can choose to take that power back and say, okay, this thing happened. It wasn't okay, but I'm not going to let that distract me or take me off my course, or put me in such a mental place that I'm not able to get up and keep going and heal myself. It doesn't mean you don't feel it. It means you heal yourself. You look at it. I saw something on Instagram yesterday, I think it was, last night, that was like, it's never your responsibility that you were abused or that you have trauma. Let's say that. It was never your responsibility that you had trauma. However, everyone has trauma in some way, shape, or form. What is everyone's responsibility is to heal from that trauma. So each of us as individuals, we do have this responsibility to heal from the trauma, because if we don't heal from it, then we put ourselves in this situation where not only are we in this stuck place of not feeling good within ourselves, but we're allowing and attracting similar situations to keep on happening, because we're in this fear state of victimhood or shame or blame. And I'm here for you, folks. I love you, whoever you are out there. I want to empower you, and so this is not to blame you or say that you're bad or wrong, but again, to empower you to perhaps see it in a different way, that you aren't at fault, but you have the ability to change something. You have the ability to change how you feel about it. That was a big digression. Okay, so maybe your mind is carrying the heavy baggage of victimhood or unforgiveness. Maybe your home and workspace are full of clutter and junk. All of these loads weigh down your body, mind, and spirit. They are real and they are heavy. The guideline of purity invites us to move into ease, to do what it takes to get rid of this heaviness wherever we find it in our lives. Clean your body, clean your mind, clean your living and workspace. So this idea of purity can extend, we already talked about it, in our body and in our mind, but it can extend into our living environment, right? So our physical house, or wherever it is that we spend the most of our time, our office or studio, so forth, can also embody this purity by regularly cleaning, freshening up, and lighting candles or incense, and finding ways to purify the energy within that space will also uplift the spirit and keep us focused on our higher aim. And of course, we can take this concept of purity into our relationships as well. I am one who believes strongly in the power of confession and forgiveness. I have found that some of the things I carry from my past actions need to be confessed, sometimes to a trusted friend and sometimes to a piece of paper that is then ritually burned. For me, this is a necessary cleansing practice for past errors in judgment and selfishness. In any way that we hold on to past wounds, we injure ourselves and keep ourselves from the ability to be pure with what is current in our lives. Forgiveness of self and other is the most generous gift we can give to ourselves. Forgiveness of self and other is the most generous gift we can give ourselves. Several years ago, when I did my Kundalini yoga teacher training under Yogi Bhajan, I had the opportunity to have a private session with him and ask him anything I wanted. At the time, he had given me the spiritual name Amrit Dev, meaning the sweet nectar and wisdom of the Guru is within you. The question I chose to ask him was how to live into the fullness of my spiritual name. He began to laugh boisterously, and with a twinkle in his eye and a strong Indian accent, he replied, "Your poop must smell like nectar, and your pee must smell like nectar." He continued to chuckle loudly, and that was the end of my time with him. I had to pick my jaw up off the floor before I could begin to contemplate what he had said. I now understand he was speaking directly to the idea of purity, that I should strive to live in such a way that everything that goes into me and everything that comes out of me is pure. So of course it's a metaphor, but it gets the point across, yeah? Yogi Bhajan's explanation of my name helped me begin to understand the difference between purification and cleanliness. Recently back from India, I am once again sorting through this difference. I spent almost 2 weeks in an ashram doing purification practices, but it took me 2 hours to come home to be American clean. In this country, we almost obsess about cleanliness, but pay little attention to purity. The thing that comes to my mind when she's giving these examples is with coronavirus and the pandemic, we're so busy spraying down counters and door handles with Lysol, and we got the wipes, we got our mask, we got, everything to like kill all the germs, we got the spray, all the chemicals, and we got the vaccine, or they're trying to make one. So cleanliness, right? This idea of killing germs, which of course some germs for sure are harmful, like viruses, but the majority of germs are really just bacteria, right? And when we are so busy killing the germs, then we not only are kind of inundating our environments and our skin with these really unhealthy chemicals and really actually harsh substances, but we're also not able to have a healthy immune system built up. I don't know if anyone's heard, or so an example that I've heard is like some parents will allow their babies to experience, not crazy amounts of like dirt and nastiness, but at least like crawl around on the floor, because coming in contact with the dirt and germs, that's how we build our immune system. If we don't ever come in contact with a virus, then our immune system never has to learn how to fight off a virus. And so some parents will overly like sanitize their babies and be overly protective of making sure their babies, don't ever get any germs in them. But this is going against nature. When we all lived in caves, there wasn't Lysol. Babies would crawl around on the dirt and put that dirt in their mouth, and there's living organisms in the dirt, and that would contribute then to their gut microbiome and so forth. But now, we're all so afraid of the coronavirus or getting sick in general, and that's not to invalidate that fear, but I think that's a great example of the point that she's making here. We're American clean, so we're cleaning off all of the germs with chemicals and so on, but we aren't pure. We don't have the immune system built up because we're relying on this false sense of cleanliness rather than our own pure bodily functions, our body's natural ability to fight off sickness, to regulate itself, and have its own natural defense mechanisms for these things. Another example would be like antibiotics. That's just nuking every single microorganism in our body, but actually there are more microorganism cells in our body than there are human cells. So most of those guys are beneficial, and when we're just continuously killing them off with antibiotics, then then the beneficial ones don't have a way to, again, build up our immune system and actually help us, which was the original agreement, right? The mutually beneficial biological allyship that we have with those organisms. So just food for thought. In this country, we almost obsess about cleanliness, antibiotics, but pay little attention to purity, living a healthy lifestyle, boosting our immune system to be what it can be naturally. Cleanliness is a process of scrubbing the outside of us. It changes our outer appearance. Purification works on our insides and changes our very essence. Okay? So cleanliness is the process of scrubbing the outside of us. We can use soap. Purification works on our insides and changes our very essence, or we can have a truly healthy lifestyle and diet that keeps us naturally more clean and healthy. Although cleanliness is important, Saucha calls us to the inward journey of purification, not the external appearance of cleanliness. Okay, that's where I'll end here, because this video is going long. I do apologize. I feel like I digressed a little bit more in this video than I normally do. So just real quickly, she does give some reflection assignments at the end of every chapter, and since we just read the first half of this chapter today, I will just read the first 2 reflection assignments, and if you'd like, you can bring them into your week with you, and yeah, just share any insights until you hear from me again next week. So this week, notice where your body is sluggish. Do you eat too much sugar like I do? Begin to purify yourself through diet and exercise and the space around you if that is making you sluggish. Notice how the sluggishness becomes lighter as you purify. Notice the difference between the external process of cleansing and the internal process of purifying. And then the next assignment this week, begin to purify your thoughts and speech. Use friends, ritual, forgiveness, journaling, etc. to release toxic, stale, or negative thoughts. Replace these thoughts with love and gratitude. I like that one. That's a nice ritual. Alright, so noticing where we are in need of some purity and cleanliness and cleansing in the body, as well as in our mind, our thoughts, and our speech. And just to say, it doesn't have to necessarily be the conventional or mainstream definition of what is clean or pure. I think what's really important about this philosophy is that we each interpret it uniquely based on what is true for us personally. So I invite you to reflect on what is pure and of the most simplified and direct essence for you. What does that look like? And how can we embody this concept in our daily lives? Thank you all so much for taking this time with me. I love you. I'll see you next week. Om.